The next morning, Luna woke to find the twins still there. They had set up a small camp near her shelter with technology she didn't recognize. Shields that kept out the morning rain scanners that mapped the area for miles, and a food processor that turned local plants into edible paste. They moved around their camp in perfect harmony, never speaking, but always knowing what the other needed. Luna watched them from her tree shelter, built high in the canopy, where the razor wolves couldn't reach. Spark and Ember were already awake, perched on branches like guards. Their eyes tracked every movement below. Dragons never fully trusted strangers, and these two aliens were the first visitors in 3 years. She climbed down using vines she had woven into rope over many months. The twins turned to watch her descent, their 8 eyes following her movements with fascination. Zex held out a cup of something that steamed in the cool morning air. It smelled like earth coffee but tasted like starlight, and Cinnamon Luna accepted it gratefully, missing the simple pleasures of civilization. Vex showed her their scanner readings from the night before. The planet was more active than she knew. Underground caves stretched for thousands of miles, filled with creatures that never saw sunlight. There were energy readings that suggested ancient technology buried deep, perhaps from a civilization that died before humans even reached the stars. Luna shared her own knowledge gained through survival. She showed them the safe paths through the forest, the plants that could heal and those that could kill in seconds. She demonstrated how to read the weather patterns by watching the way the moss grew on trees. The twins recorded everything, building a database of impossible survival skills. They asked about her magic, how an elf could do things that science said were impossible. Luna tried to explain that it wasn't magic exactly, but a connection to energy fields that most species couldn't feel. Elves had evolved on a planet where the line between thought and reality was thin, where wanting something enough could make it real. To demonstrate, she held out her hand and concentrated. A small flame appeared, dancing above her palm without fuel or technology. The twins' scanners went wild trying to understand, but their machines could only see the effect, not the cause. Luna explained that every elf could do small things like this, but warriors trained for decades to do. Morzax asked if she could teach them, but Luna shook her head sadly. The ability was genetic, coded into elf DNA over millions of years of evolution. Humans had tried to replicate it through science, but had only managed to create poor copies that required massive machines to work. The twins seemed disappointed but accepted this limitation. Over the following days, they developed a routine. The twins would explore during daylight, collecting samples and taking readings. Luna would hunt and gather, teaching them what was safe. She noticed they never separated, always staying within sight of each other, as if being apart would cause physical pain. One evening while cooking dinner, Luna asked about their species, about why they moved as one. Vex explained they were quantum entangled at birth, their consciousness existing in 2 bodies simultaneously. What one knew, the other knew instantly. What one felt, the other experienced. They were not 2 beings, but one mind, with 2 forms. This fascinated Luna, who had never encountered anything like it. She asked if it was lonely being the only one of themselves. Zex laughed, a sound like crystals breaking, and said it was less lonely than being a single mind trapped in one body. They always had company, always, had understanding even in the vastness of space. Luna understood in her own way. Her connection with Spark and Ember was similar, though not as complete. She could feel their emotions, sense their needs, but they were still separate beings. The dragons chose to stay with her but could leave if they wanted. The twins had no such choice. They were forever bound. On the 4th night, disaster struck. A swarm of metal-eating locusts descended on the twins' camp, destroying their equipment in minutes. Luna woke to their shouts of alarm and raced down from her shelter. Spark and Ember followed, breathing fire to drive back the swarm, but it was too late. The twins' ship communication array was ruined. Without it, they couldn't call their mothership, couldn't leave the planet. They were stranded just like Luna. The twins stood in the wreckage of their camp, their blue skin pale with shock. They had never been cut off from technology before, never been truly alone. Except for each other. Luna offered them shelter in her treehouse. It was cramped with 4 people and 2 dragons, but it was safe. The twins accepted gratefully. though they struggled with the primitive conditions. No running water, no electricity, no climate control. Just wood and rope, and determination. She taught them to build their own shelter, showing them how to weave branches together, how to seal gaps with mud and sap, how to create ventilation that would keep out rain, but let in air. The twins were quick learners, therefore, hands each working in perfect coordination. They built in one day what had taken Luna a week. As they worked, Vex asked about Earth, about the human homeworld Luna had visited once. She admitted she had only seen it briefly during a military ceremony, but the memory was clear. Blue oceans, green forests, cities that reached the clouds, and billions of humans living together despite their differences. The twins had never seen Earth. Though they had heard stories, they asked if humans were really as chaotic as everyone said. Luna laughed and confirmed it. Humans were impossible to predict. They could be cruel and kind in the same breath, could destroy and create with equal passion. That chaos had saved the galaxy. Vex wondered out loud if that was why Luna had survived here. She had learned from humans how to adapt, how to change when circumstances demanded it. Most species, including their own, followed patterns and routines. But Luna mixed elf tradition with human innovation, creating something new. That night, a storm hit the forest with violence that shook the trees. Lightning struck nearby several times and rain fell sideways through the air. The twins huddled in their new shelter, while Luna stood outside checking her defensive barriers. Spark and Ember flew through the storm like they were born to it. Dragons loved wild weather. When morning came, they found destruction everywhere. Trees were down, blocking paths they had used. Streams had become rivers, washing away familiar landmarks. But Luna wasn't discouraged. She had survived worse, and now she had help to rebuild. The twins seemed changed by the storm, as if surviving it had awakened something primal in them. They moved with more confidence, spoke with more certainty. They had faced nature without technology and lived. They were beginning to understand why Luna had thrived here instead of just survived. She took them to her sacred place that day, the crystal pool where they had first seen her. The storm had washed away the blood from her last battle, leaving the water cleaner than ever. Luna explained that the minerals in the pool had healing properties, could cure infections and speed recovery from wounds. Vex tested the water with the few instruments that still worked and whistled in amazement. The chemical composition was similar to the healing baths on their homeworld, but naturally occurring. Luna had discovered it by accident when she had fallen down a cliff in her first month here, breaking several bones. The twins asked permission to bathe in the pool, and Luna granted it, watching as they removed their liquid metal suits. Underneath their blue skin had patterns like circuitry that glowed brighter in the mineral water. They sighed in unison as the warmth penetrated their bodies, healing small injuries they hadn't even noticed. Luna joined them in the pool this time, wearing her undersuit, and they sat together in comfortable silence. Spark and Ember played in the shallows, chasing fish that were too quick to catch. It was peaceful in a way Luna hadn't experienced since before the war, when her people had gathering pools like this. 2 weeks passed, and the twins had adapted to life on the planet better than Luna expected. They learned to hunt, using traps instead of weapons, learned to read the sky for weather changes, learned to respect the forest instead of trying to control it. Their blue skin had darkened slightly from exposure to the 3 suns, and their movements had become more fluid, less mechanical. Luna was teaching them to fish in the river when Spark suddenly grew agitated. The little dragon flew circles above, their heads crying out in warning. Ember joined her sister, breathing small puffs of flame toward the sky. Luna had never seen them act this way except when great danger approached. Then she saw it. A ship descending through the clouds, but not the twins' mothership. This was a swarm scout vessel, its biomechanical hull pulsing with sickly green light. Luna thought they had all been destroyed when humanity won the war, but here was proof that some had survived. The twins wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. The swarm ship would scan the entire planet looking for life signs to consume or assimilate. Luna made a decision that would change everything. She told the twins to trust her, then began to sing. It was an elf battle song, older than human civilization, a sound that resonated with the fundamental forces of the universe. As she sang, Spark and Ember began to change. Their small forms expanded, growing larger with each note of the song. Scales hardened, wings stretched, and fire built in their throats. The twins watched in shock as the house cat-sized dragons became war beasts, 30 feet long. Their cute features became terrible weapons, teeth like swords, claws like spears, eyes that burned with ancient fury. This was their true form, the shape they were meant to have before Luna had kept them small for convenience. Luna's own transformation was subtler, but no less dramatic. Her armor began to glow with inner light, and her silver hair floated around her as if underwater. Her eyes turned from green to pure white, and energy crackled between her fingers. She was no longer just a survivor, but an elf warrior in full battle rage. The swarm ship noticed them, then turning its weapons toward the group Luna didn't wait for it to fire. She leaped onto Ember's back and soared into the sky. Spark followed, with the twins clinging to her spines in terror. They had never flown before, never felt the wind tear at their clothes, or seen the ground shrink below. Luna guided Ember straight at the swarm ship, drawing her plasma blade as they approached. The weapon had been a gift from a human admiral after she saved his daughter from slavers. It could cut through any known material, and Luna had kept it sharp for 3 years, waiting for a moment like this. The swarm ship fired biological missiles that looked like screaming mouths full of teeth. Spark incinerated them with dragon fire hot enough to melt stone. Ember dodged and weaved through the air with grace that belied her massive size. The twins held on desperately, their quantum-entangled minds probably the only thing keeping them synchronized. Luna leapt from Ember's back when they were close enough, landing on the swarm ship's hull with a sound like thunder. She drove her blade deep into the organic metal, feeling it scream through vibrations in her bones. The ship tried to absorb her, to make her part of itself, but elf magic and human technology combined were too much for it. She carved her way to what she hoped was the control center, fighting through antibodies that looked like giant white blood cells with teeth. Inside, she found the pilot, if it could still be called that. A creature that had once been something else, now twisted into a mass of flesh and machinery that pulsed with stolen life. Luna ended its suffering with a single strike, then set the ship to self-destruct. She had learned how to read swarm technology during the war when she had served as a scout for human forces. She had minutes to escape before the biological reactor went critical and turned everything within a mile into organic soup. She ran back to the hole she had carved and jumped without hesitation. Ember caught her perfectly, as they had practiced 1,000 times in smaller ways. The twins were still on Spark's back, their blue faces pale with fear but also alive with excitement. They had never experienced anything like this. They flew hard and fast away from the dying ship. Luna could feel it building to critical mass behind them. The explosion, when it came, was both beautiful and terrible. Green fire that reached toward the stars, and a sound like a million voices screaming in unison. The shockwave knocked them from the sky. They crashed in the forest miles from home, Luna's magic cushioning the impact enough to save them. Spark and Ember slowly shrank back to their small size, exhausted from the transformation. The twins lay on the ground, gasping, their suits torn and bodies bruised. But Holvex was the first to speak, asking how Luna had hidden such power, why she had lived like a primitive when she could do that. Luna explained that power without purpose was meaningless. She could have lived like a god on this planet. But what would be the point? She needed challenge, needed growth, needed to stay sharp for moments like this. Zex asked about the dragons, about their true nature. Luna revealed that dragons were the first intelligent species in the galaxy, older than any current civilization. They had chosen to become small to survive in a universe that had grown too crowded for giants. Spark and Ember were among the last of their kind. The twins helped Luna build a new shelter that night, since returning to the old one might bring more swarm if they were tracking the scout ship. They worked in silence, mostly still processing what they had witnessed. Their entire understanding of the universe had shifted in the span of an hour. As they sat around the fire, Luna told them more about the war. She had been a child when it started, barely old enough to hold a weapon. Her parents had been diplomats trying to negotiate peace with the swarm before anyone knew that peace was impossible. The swarm consumed everything in there, Path she had watched her parents die in the first attack on the elf colonies had escaped with other children on a refugee ship. That was where she had met her first humans, soldiers who had come to evacuate civilians. They had been crude and loud, and wonderful, teaching her to fight with guns and fists when elf magic wasn't enough. The twins shared their own story. Then they had been born on a generation ship traveling between galaxies. Their species reproduced rarely, and twins like them were considered sacred. They had every advantage, every opportunity, but felt empty until they started exploring. They had been searching for meaning, for connection, for something real. Luna understood that search. She had found her meaning in survival, in protecting others, in the bonds she had formed with Spark and Ember. The twins were still searching, but she could see they were getting closer. This experience had changed them, made them more than observers. That night, Luna dreamed of the swarm ship and wondered if it had sent a signal before dying. If more would come. If the war everyone thought was over might still have battles to fight. She woke to find the twins keeping watch, their 4 eyes, each scanning the darkness they had learned vigilance in. The morning they found evidence that the swarm ship had not been alone. Tracks in the mud suggested something had survived the crash and escaped into the forest. Something with too many legs and a trail of biological waste that killed plants on. Contact Luna knew they would have to hunt it down. But first they needed to prepare. The twins had lost most of their technology, but Luna had something better, knowledge earned through blood and pain. She would teach them to fight not with machines, but with will and determination. She would show them why humans had won the war. They spent days training Luna, teaching them combat techniques from a dozen species. The twins were fast learners, their quantum entanglement allowing them to coordinate attacks perfectly. When one learned a move, the other knew it instantly. They became dangerous in ways their peaceful species had never imagined. Spark and Ember served as practice opponents, never hurting the twins, but pushing them to their limits. Dragons understood the value of struggle, the importance of earning strength. The twins began to respect the little creatures not as pets, but as teachers in their own right. On the 7th day they were ready. Luna had crafted weapons for them, from swarm ship debris blades that could cut through bioarmor and spears that could pierce 3 feet of organic shielding. The twins had painted their faces with war paint made from crushed berries and clay, looking nothing like the explorers who had first appeared. They hunted the swarm survivor through the forest, following its trail of death and corruption. Luna led them in silence, using hand signals she had taught them. The twins moved like shadows, their natural grace enhanced by newfound purpose. The crystal pool sparkled under 3 moons as Luna removed her battle armor piece by piece. Each scale of metal fell to the purple sand with a soft thud. Her long silver hair cascaded down her bare shoulders, catching the moonlight like spider silk. She had been alone on this planet for 3 years since her escape pod crashed in the northern mountains. The war between humans and the swarm had scattered her people across the galaxy, and she was probably the last elf in this sector. Luna stepped into the warm water, feeling the minerals heal her tired muscles. Her pointed ears could hear every sound in the forest around her, the clicking of insect wings, the rustle of leaves in the wind, the soft breathing of her 2 dragon companions. Spark and Ember lay curled on the shore, no bigger than house cats but deadly when needed. Their scales glowed softly gold and red like dying coals in a fire. She had found them as eggs in the wreckage of a cargo ship, their mother dead from radiation. Poisoning Luna had carried them for weeks, keeping them warm with her body heat until they hatched. Now 3 years later, they were her only family in this empty world. They hunted together, explored together, and protected each other from the dangers of this alien place. The water reached her waist as she waded deeper. Her elf eyes could see perfectly in the darkness, spotting fish swimming between her legs. She had learned which ones were safe to eat, which ones were poison, and which ones could take off a finger if she wasn't careful. This planet had taught her many lessons through pain and survival. Luna began to wash the dirt and blood from her skin. Today had been hard. A pack of razor wolves had attacked her shelter, forcing her to fight. For hours, Spark had burned 2 of them while Ember had torn the throat from another. But there had been so many, Luna had exhausted her magic reserves, something that would take days to fully restore. She ducked under the water, letting it flow through. Her hair, when she surfaced, she froze. Two figures stood at the edge of the clearing watching her. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, with blue skin that seemed to pulse with inner light. Each had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on their faces. Their bodies were thin, but she could see the strength in their movements. Luna did not cover herself or cry out. Elf warriors knew no shame about their bodies, and showing fear would be dangerous. She stood slowly, water dripping from her pale skin, and met their gaze steadily. Spark and Ember had not moved or made a sound, which was strange. They usually warned her of any approach. The twins, for she could see now, they were identical, moved closer in perfect synchronization. Their 4 eyes each never left her, studying her form with an intensity that wasn't quite desire but something else. Pure curiosity, perhaps, or scientific interest. They wore matching silver suits that seemed to be made of liquid metal flowing over their bodies like water. The first one spoke in broken Galactic Standard, his voice sounding like wind chimes. "Katie," he said, pointing at her, though that was not her name. Luna remained still, wondering how they knew any human words at all. The second twin added more, words explaining in simple phrases that they had been tracking her for weeks, following the energy signature of her escape pod. Luna finally moved, walking slowly toward the shore where her armor lay. The twins watched every muscle movement, every drop of water that fell from her skin. She could feel their scanners trying to read her biology, but elf magic interfered with most technology. She had learned this from the human scientists on the colony ship before it was destroyed. She reached for her clothes, but the first twin held up a hand, making a peaceful gesture. They meant no harm, he tried to explain. They were collectors, explorers from the Andromeda sector, searching for rare species. An elf with tamed dragons was beyond anything they had hoped to find. They had thought her kind was extinct. Luna laughed, then a sound like silver bells that made both twins step back in surprise. She pulled on her undersuit made from spider silk of her home world and faced them properly. Was no one's collection, no prize to be won. She was a warrior who had fought in 12 systems, had saved human colonies from the swarm, had earned medals from 3 different species. Governments, Spark chose that moment to yawn, showing rows of tiny but sharp teeth. Ember stretched like a cat, her wings spreading to their full span of 3 feet. The twins took another step back, clearly not expecting the small creatures to have wings. Luna smiled, knowing her dragons were full of surprises. The second twin introduced them as Zex and Vex brothers from a species she had never heard of. They had been watching her for 3 days, learning her routines, studying her behavior. They had not meant to find her bathing, but the timing had been coincidence. They seemed genuinely apologetic about the intrusion, though their eyes suggested they were not sorry about what they had seen. Luna asked them why they had not announced themselves earlier. Vex explained they had wanted to observe her in her natural state, to understand how she had survived alone for so long. Most species would have died within months on this hostile planet, but she had thrived, built a shelter, learned to hunt, even tamed local predators. She corrected them quickly. Spark and Ember were not local. They were dragon spawn from the inner colonies, bred for war but raised by her from eggs. The twins exchanged glances, their 4 eyes each blinking in sequence. Dragons were myths in their culture, legends from a time before space, travel. Yet here were 2 living examples defying everything they thought they knew. Luna finished dressing in her armor, each piece clicking into place with practiced ease. The scales were from a black dragon she had killed on Titan base, mixed with metal from her crashed escape pod. It was unique, irreplaceable, and had saved her life countless times. The twins seemed fascinated by the craftsmanship, scanning it with devices that beeped and hummed. She asked them what they really wanted. Not the story about collecting rare species. Zex admitted they were lonely. They had been traveling for 50 years Earth time, searching for something they couldn't quite name. They had found many species, but none that surprised them anymore, until they found her signal. An elf alone on a hostile planet had seemed impossible. Luna understood loneliness. She had been alone except for her dragons for 3 years. Before that, she had watched her colony ship burn, watched 10,000 elves die in seconds as the swarm tore through their defenses. She had barely made it to an escape pod, had drifted for weeks before crashing here. The twins offered her food from their ship, strange cubes that dissolved on the tongue and tasted like memories of better times. Luna shared her own hunt from earlier. Roasted razor wolf seasoned with local herbs that made the tongue tingle. Spark and Ember hunted their own meal, catching the flying snakes that came out at night as they ate. Vex asked about the war, about how humans had won when everyone thought they would fall. Luna explained that humans had something the swarm didn't expect: allies. Species from across the galaxy had joined them, not from fear but from respect. Humans had a way of making friends, of bringing out the best in others even in the middle of horror. They found the swarm creature in a cave deep in the northern mountains. It had been building something, a structure made from bones and secreted resin that looked like a communication array. Luna recognized it from the war. The creature was trying to call for reinforcements to bring the swarm back to this sector. The thing that had once been a pilot was now a nightmare of adaptation. It had grown new limbs to navigate the forest, absorbed local wildlife to gain their abilities, and built itself armor from stones and wood. It saw them coming and screamed a sound that made their teeth ache. The battle was brutal and chaotic. The creature could split itself into smaller parts, each one deadly and independent. Zex lost part of his ear to a flying piece that had teeth. Vex took poison barbs in his shoulder that made his left arms go numb. Luna's armor cracked under the assault of acid spit, but they fought as a team. The twins used their quantum connection to attack from two sides at once. Never, where the creature expected, Spark and Ember breathed fire in controlled bursts, herding the smaller pieces back together. Luna used her magic to create barriers and weapons from pure energy. In the end, it was teamwork that won. Luna pinned the main body with her spear while the twins cut away its defenses piece by piece. Ember delivered the killing blow, a stream of dragon fire so hot it turned sand to glass. The creature died screaming in frequencies only Luna's elf ears could fully hear. They destroyed the communication array completely, leaving no chance it could be repaired or salvaged. Then they burned the entire cave system to ensure no trace of swarm biology survived. Luna had learned during the war that even a single cell could regenerate given time and resources. The journey back to their territory took 3 days. The twins were different now. They had killed, had faced death, had discovered they were capable of violence when necessary. Their peaceful species had no word for what they had become. So Luna gave them a human warrior. She taught them human philosophy during the walk back. How humans believed that good people must be capable of violence but choose peace. That gentleness without strength was just weakness. That the capacity for darkness made the choice of light meaningful. The twins absorbed this like they absorbed everything else. When they reached the crystal pool, they all bathed together, washing away blood and poison and fear. The mineral water healed their wounds but left scars. Luna said scars were important. They were proof of survival lessons written on skin. The twins traced their new marks with wonder. That night, Luna told them about Kelly. Her human friend from the colony ship, Kelly, had been an engineer, small and quiet and brilliant. She had designed the escape pods that saved hundreds of lives when the swarm attacked. She had died ensuring Luna's pod launched, staying behind to manual override damaged systems. The twins asked if all humans were so brave. Luna said no, but many were humans. Had a saying that courage wasn't the absence of fear but action. Despite fear, Kelly had been terrified but had acted anyway. That was why humanity had united the galaxy. They showed others what courage looked like. Over the following weeks, life settled into a new rhythm. The twins integrated fully into Luna's survival lifestyle. They built a better shelter together, combining elf techniques with their advanced understanding of physics and materials. They created tools that were both primitive and sophisticated. Luna taught them to communicate with Spark and Ember, not through words, but through emotion and intent. The dragons began to trust them, allowing them to touch their scales and even ride short distances. The twins discovered that dragon fire could be controlled and directed with the right mental frequency. One morning they woke to find visitors at their camp perimeter, not swarm but refugees. A small group of various species who had crashed on the planet weeks ago and had been barely surviving. There was a human woman named Grace, a rock-like Gorvian called Density, and 3 insectoid cliques whose names were musical notes. Luna welcomed them carefully. 3 years of solitude had made her wary of groups. But these beings were desperate, hungry, and scared. Grace had a broken arm that had healed wrong. Density was missing chunks of his mineral body. The cliques were down to emergency rations of the specific fungi they needed to live. The twins surprised Luna by immediately taking charge of helping. They used their remaining technology to set Grace's arm properly. They showed Density where to find compatible minerals to regenerate his body. They figured out how to cultivate the clique's fungi using local substitutes. Luna realized the twins had found their purpose. They were not just explorers or collectors, but healers and teachers. They took the random survivors and began forming them into a community. Each species had something to contribute knowledge or skills that helped the whole group. Grace knew how to build water purification systems from basic materials. Density could shape stone and metal with his body's natural abilities. The cliques could process organic matter into various useful chemicals, including antibiotics. Together, they transformed the camp into something approaching civilization. Luna found herself in a leadership role she hadn't sought. The others looked to her for decisions, for protection, for hope. She had been alone so long she had forgotten how heavy responsibility could be. But she also discovered she had missed it, missed having people to protect. The twins served as her advisors, their dual perspective allowing them to see problems from multiple angles. They suggested building in the trees like Luna had, but on a larger scale creating a network of platforms and bridges that would keep everyone safe from ground predators. Construction took months, but gave everyone purpose. Grace designed the structural supports, Density shaped the wood and metal. The cliques produced adhesives stronger than any earth glue. The twins coordinated everything, their quantum connection allowing them to be in 2 places at once. Luna and her dragons provided security, hunting for food and watching for dangers. She taught everyone basic combat skills, though she hoped they would never need them. The swarm scout had been destroyed, but she knew that didn't mean they were safe space. It was vast, but coincidences happened. One night while sitting around a communal fire, Grace asked Luna about Earth, about what it was like now. Luna admitted she didn't know. It had been 3 years since the war ended. Anything could have happened. Humanity might have become the new galactic empire, or might have retreated to their home system. The twins suggested trying to build a transmitter to contact passing ships. Their technology was mostly destroyed, but between all the crashed ships on the planet, they might salvage enough. Everyone agreed it was worth trying, even if the chances were small. They spent weeks gathering components from crash sites across the planet. Luna riding Ember to scout, while Spark protected the settlement. They found pieces of human technology, swarm biotech and machinery from species they couldn't identify. Each piece was a puzzle that Grace and the twins worked to solve. During one salvage run, Luna found another escape pod from her colony ship. The occupant had died years ago, but their personal effects remained, including a datapad with pictures of the elf colonies before the war, green cities that sang in the wind, children playing with baby dragons, art and music and beauty that was now gone. She shared the images with the settlement that night. Everyone was quiet as they looked at what had been lost. The twins asked if she wanted to find other elf survivors, if any existed. Luna said yes, but not at the cost of abandoning the family she had built here. The transmitter came together slowly. It was ugly, a mix of technologies that shouldn't work together but somehow did. Grace called it the most human thing she had ever built, held together by determination and hope more than engineering. The twins added their own modifications using their understanding of quantum mechanics. The day they activated it, everyone gathered to watch. The machine hummed and sparked, sending a signal into space that said they were here, they were alive, they needed help. It might take years for anyone to hear it, but it was better than silence. That night, Luna couldn't sleep. She walked to the crystal pool where she had first met the twins. The water reflected the 3 moons, and she remembered how vulnerable she had felt that night. Now she felt strong, not because of her magic or her dragons, but because she wasn't alone. The twins found her there. They didn't speak, just sat beside her in comfortable silence. They had come so far from the explorers who had watched her bathe from strangers to allies to family. It had happened so gradually she hadn't noticed until now. Zex finally spoke, saying they had been wrong when they first met her. They had thought she was a specimen, something to study and catalog, but she was a teacher, someone who had shown them how to truly live, not just exist. Vex added that their species would want to know what they had learned here. Luna asked if they regretted being stranded, and they said no in unison. This experience had given them more than 50 years of exploration. They had found purpose, found family, found themselves. They were no longer just observers, but participants in life. 6 months after they activated the transmitter, life in the settlement had become almost comfortable. They had built 30 platforms in the trees connected by rope bridges and pulleys. Everyone had their own space but remained close enough to help each other. The cliques had developed a fungus that glowed at night, providing gentle light without fire. Luna was teaching the children, for 3 more groups of refugees had found them, how to read the forest when Spark and Ember suddenly looked to the sky. The dragons had been restless all morning, and now Luna understood why a ship was coming. But not just any ship. It was massive, casting a shadow that covered their entire settlement. The vessel that descended was human design but modified. With technology from a dozen species, Luna recognized the configuration. It was an exploration carrier designed for establishing colonies on new worlds. The hull bore scars from battle, but also artistic patterns that looked like elf designs when the landing ramp lowered. Luna expected human soldiers. Instead, a figure in modified armor stepped out and removed their helmet, revealing pointed ears and silver hair. An elf male, probably 40 years younger than Luna, with eyes that held both hope and disbelief. His name was Marcus, a half-human, half-elf hybrid from the 2nd generation, born after the colonies were established, when the species had mingled. He spoke with a human accent, but moved with elf grace. Behind him came others, elves, humans, and various species working together. Marcus explained that the war had changed everything. Humans hadn't become conquerors but liberators. They had freed worlds from the swarm, then helped rebuild. They had searched for survivors from all the destroyed colonies, including the elf ships. Some had been found enough to start again. The twins stepped forward, introducing themselves and their quantum nature. Marcus was fascinated, having never encountered their species. He said the galaxy needed explorers and scientists now that the fighting was done. There was so much to rebuild, so much to discover. Grace asked about Earth, and Marcus smiled. It had become the center of a new alliance, not through force but through example. Humans had shared their technology freely, had welcomed refugees, had turned their military into a protection and rescue force. The chaos that had saved them in war now drove them to save others in peace. But Marcus hadn't come just to rescue them. He had come with an offer. This planet, with its challenges and resources, could become a colony, a place where different species could work together, as Luna's group had already proven. The carrier had everything needed to establish a real settlement. Luna looked at her family, for that's what they had become. Grace was holding hands with one of the newer refugees, a young human man who had arrived months ago. Density had carved toys for the children from stone. The cliques were teaching anyone who would listen about chemistry and biology. The twins were the first to speak, saying they wanted to stay. They had found something here that no amount of exploration could match. They wanted to help build this colony, to make it a place where cooperation wasn't just necessary but natural, where species learned from each other. One by one, the others agreed. They had been through too much together to separate now. Even those who had families elsewhere chose to stay and bring them here. This harsh planet had forged them into something stronger than they had been. Alone, Marcus was surprised but pleased. He had brought colonists, but finding an established community was better. He ordered supplies to be unloaded, prefab buildings, medical equipment, food processors, and even entertainment systems. Things that would make life easier but not replace what they had built. Luna watched as her tree settlement was integrated with new technology. The platforms were reinforced with metal, the rope bridges replaced with energy fields. But the design remained hers, the heart of it unchanged. The crystal pool was designated a sacred site, protected and preserved. Over the following days, Luna learned about the new galaxy. Marcus brought news that touched her deeply. A human admiral who had given her the plasma blade had survived the war. He had spoken of her often, had insisted that searches continue for elf survivors. He would be glad to know she lived. More importantly, a dozen elf colony ships had been found, damaged but repairable. Thousands of her people had survived scattered but alive. They were gathering on a new world called New Eden, establishing a home that honored the old ways while embracing the new. Like what Luna had done here, the twins spent time with Marcus's scientists, sharing their discoveries about the planet. They had mapped the underground caves, found mineral deposits that could revolutionize energy storage, identified plants with medical properties. Their time here had produced more valuable data than decades of traditional exploration. Grace worked with the human engineers, teaching them her improvised solutions. Many were more efficient than standard procedures born from necessity and desperation. Her water purification system was adopted, immediately copied for use in other frontier settlements. Density and his people began carving a monument at the settlement's center. It told the story of their survival in pictures and symbols that any species could understand. Luna was depicted finding the dragons, the twins arriving, the swarm battle, and the community coming together. The cliques established a laboratory where they could produce medicines and materials. Their fungi cultivation had applications that Marcus's scientists hadn't imagined. They were offered positions at major research stations, but chose to remain here where their work had begun. Luna found herself appointed as the colony's military advisor and guardian. She trained new arrivals in survival and combat, but more importantly in cooperation. She taught them that strength came not from weapons but from unity. That diversity was power. The dragons became symbols of the colony. Spark and Ember would sometimes reveal their true size to remind everyone that power existed here. Delegations from other worlds came just to see them, to confirm that dragons were real. Luna allowed it, knowing that wonder could inspire peace as much as fear. One day the twins came to Luna with news. Their mothership had been contacted. Their species wanted them to return to share what they had learned, but the twins had decided to stay permanently. This was their home now. They would send data and reports but would not leave. Luna was touched by their loyalty, but not surprised. The twins had been transformed by this place just as she had. They were no longer just observers but builders of something new. Their quantum connection had found its purpose in helping others connect. A year after Marcus arrived, the colony had grown to 3,000 beings. The tree settlement had become a city in the forest with platforms extending for miles. Ground level had been claimed too, with densities, people building stone structures that would last millennia. Luna stood at the crystal pool one evening, remembering that first night when the twins had seen her. The vulnerability she had felt then seemed distant now. She was stronger, not because she had survived alone, but because she had learned to survive together. Marcus joined her, bringing news from New Eden. The Elf Council wanted her to visit to share her experiences. She was considered a hero among her people, a symbol of resilience. But Luna hesitated. Her place was here now, with the family she had built. The twins helped her decide, suggesting she go but return. They could manage the colony's defense for a few months. Spark and Ember would keep watch. Grace had learned enough combat skills to lead training. Density could literally become a wall if needed. Luna traveled to New Eden for the first time in 4 years, leaving the planet. The journey took weeks, giving her time to think about how much had changed. She had been a scared survivor who had become a teacher, a leader, a bridge between species. New Eden was beautiful but felt wrong to Luna. Too perfect, too controlled. The elves there had preserved the old ways, exactly trying to recreate what was lost. But Luna had learned that growth came from change, from mixing the old with the new. She spoke to the council about her experiences, about the twins who moved as one, about dragons who chose to be small, about humans who taught her to fight with more than magic. They listened politely, but she could see they didn't truly understand. When she Returned to her colony, she found it thriving. The twins had handled a minor crisis with raiders using negotiation instead of violence. Grace had established trade with another colony, exchanging their unique medicines for technology Density had discovered a new metal in the deep caves. Luna realized this was her true home now, not because she had crashed here, but because she had chosen to stay. She had built something from nothing, had turned survival into prosperity, had created a family. From strangers, the colony was named Unity at the twins' suggestion. It became known throughout the galaxy as a place where impossible things happened, where dragons flew with children on their backs, where quantum beings taught philosophy, where humans and elves created hybrid technology. Luna lived to see it grow into a major world. Thousands, then millions, came to Unity, drawn by its reputation for acceptance and innovation. She remained its guardian, teaching new generations the lessons she had learned, that strength came from diversity, that survival required adaptation. The twins never left living far longer than their species normally did. They claimed it was the mineral pool, but Luna knew better. It was purpose that kept them alive, the joy of building something greater than themselves. They died within minutes of each other, their quantum connection unbroken to the end.